Danny Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked up at the evening sky. The sun was setting over Cedar Falls, Iowa, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. It had been another long day at the salvage yard, pulling apart old cars and sorting through broken machines that other people had thrown away. At 34 years old, Danny had learned to find peace in simple things: the smell of motor oil, the satisfaction of making something work again, the sound of his daughter Lily laughing as she played with their old dog, Max, near the house. 3 years ago, his wife had died from cancer. The doctors had done everything they could, but sometimes things just break in ways that cannot be fixed. Danny had cried for months. Then he had picked himself up because Lily needed him and he had kept going. That was what you did when you were a father. You kept going. Lily was 8 now, with her mother's brown eyes and her father's stubborn chin. She was the reason Danny woke up every morning. She was the reason he worked so hard. Everything he did was for her. "Dad, dinner is ready," Lily called from the porch. She had learned to heat up frozen meals and make sandwiches because Danny often worked until dark. "Coming, sweetheart," Danny called back. He set down his wrench and started walking toward the house. That was when the sky exploded. A sound like thunder shook the ground, but there were no clouds. Danny looked up and saw something impossible. A ball of fire was falling from the sky, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. It was huge, bigger than anything he had ever seen fly. And it was coming down fast, heading straight for the old cornfield behind his property. The impact knocked Danny off his feet. The ground shook like an earthquake. A wave of heat washed over him, and he covered his face with his arms. When he looked up again, a column of black smoke was rising from the cornfield. "Lily, get inside and stay there," Danny shouted. His voice was calm but firm. "Lock the door and do not come out until I come back." "But Dad—" "Now, Lily." She ran inside. Danny heard the lock click. Good girl. He grabbed his shotgun from the truck and drove toward the smoke. His hands were shaking, but he kept driving. Whatever had fallen from the sky, he needed to see it. He needed to understand. The cornfield was destroyed. Stalks lay flat in every direction, burned and broken. In the center of the destruction sat something that made Danny stop the truck and stare. It was a ship. Not an airplane, not a helicopter, but a ship like something from the science fiction movies Lily liked to watch. It was enormous, easily as big as the shopping mall in the next town. Its surface was covered with strange symbols that glowed with a faint blue light. Parts of it were torn open, leaking fluids that Danny did not recognize. Smoke poured from dozens of holes in its hull. Something had attacked this ship. Something had shot it down. Danny should have driven away. He should have called the police, the army, someone who was trained for this kind of thing. But he had spent his whole life fixing things that other people said were beyond repair. He had never been able to walk away from something broken. He got out of the truck and walked toward the ship. A section of the hull groaned and shifted. Metal scraped against metal and a door opened. Or maybe it fell open because the mechanism was clearly damaged. Light spilled out, flickering and unstable. A figure stepped through the doorway and collapsed onto the burned ground. Danny raised his shotgun, then slowly lowered it. She was tall. No, she was huge. Even lying on the ground, Danny could tell she would stand at least 9 feet tall if she could get up. Her skin was the color of polished copper, shimmering slightly in the fading light. Her hair was long and silver, spread around her head like a halo. She wore clothing made of materials Danny had never seen before, but the clothing was torn and stained with something that looked like blood, except it was darker, almost purple. Her eyes opened. They were gold like molten metal, and they burned with an inner light that was both beautiful and terrifying. She spoke. The words meant nothing to Danny. They were sounds from a language that had never been spoken on Earth, but the tone was clear. She was afraid. She was hurt. She was asking for help. Danny Miller had never met an alien before. He had never even believed they existed. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, there was a person lying in the dirt, bleeding and scared, and Danny knew only one way to respond to that. He knelt beside her. "I do not know if you can understand me," he said slowly, "but I am going to help you. I am going to get you somewhere safe. Can you move?" She stared at him. Those golden eyes searched his face, looking for something. Threat, deception. Whatever she was looking for, she did not seem to find it. Slowly, painfully, she nodded. Getting her into the truck was the hardest thing Danny had ever done. She was heavy, far heavier than a human her size would be. Her body was built differently, with denser muscles and bones. But Danny was strong from years of physical work, and she helped as much as she could. Together, they managed to get her into the truck bed. She barely fit. "Stay down," Danny told her. "Stay hidden. I am taking you to my home." She said something in response. He still could not understand the words, but her eyes told him everything. She was trusting him. This powerful, impossible being from another world was putting her life in his hands. Danny drove back to the salvage yard. His mind was racing with questions. What was she? Where did she come from? Who had attacked her? Were they coming back? But underneath all those questions was something simpler, something that Danny Miller understood better than anyone. Here was something broken. Here was something that needed to be fixed. He had no idea what he was doing. He had no training, no knowledge, no resources. All he had was a salvage yard full of junk, a daughter who needed him to come home safe, and a stubborn refusal to give up on anything. It would have to be enough. Lily was watching from the window when he pulled up. Her eyes went wide when she saw the figure in the truck bed. Danny expected her to scream, to run, to be afraid. Instead, she opened the door and walked outside. "Dad," she said, her voice filled with wonder, "is that a real alien?" "Yes, sweetheart," Danny said, "and she is hurt. We are going to help her." Lily nodded, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "Okay, I will get the first aid kit." She ran inside. Danny looked at the alien woman lying in his truck, then up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, something had hurt this woman. Somewhere out there, enemies might be looking for her. But right now, she was in Cedar Falls, Iowa. She was in Danny Miller's salvage yard. And for whatever reason, Danny felt like that meant she was exactly where she needed to be. He did not know it yet, but this night would change everything. Not just for him and Lily, but for the entire human race. The universe was about to get a lot bigger. The first 3 days were difficult. The alien woman could not speak English, and Danny could not understand her language. They communicated through gestures, through expressions, through the simple human act of showing kindness without expecting anything in return. Danny gave her his bedroom because it was the only room big enough for her to lie down. Even then, her feet hung over the edge of the bed. He slept on the couch, waking up every few hours to check on her, to bring her water, to change the bandages on her wounds. Her blood was darker than human blood, almost purple, but it seemed to clot the same way. Her wounds were healing faster than any human wound would heal. By the 3rd day, she could sit up. By the 4th day, she could walk. On the 5th day, she fixed something. Danny had found pieces of strange technology scattered around the crash site. He had gathered them carefully, not knowing what they were but hoping they might be useful. One of them was a small device, about the size of a phone, with a cracked screen and exposed wiring. The alien woman picked it up, studied it for a moment, then reached into the pile of parts and pulled out 3 specific pieces. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, connecting wires, adjusting components. Within an hour, the device hummed to life. She held it to her throat and spoke. The device glowed, processing her words, and then a voice emerged. It was still her voice, but now the words were English. "Thank you," she said, "for saving my life." Danny stared at her. "You can understand me now." This device translates. It will take time to learn your language patterns, but yes, we can communicate." Lily, who had been watching from the doorway, ran into the room. "That is so cool. What is your name? Where are you from? How does your ship fly? Do you have a family? What is your favorite color?" The alien woman laughed. It was a strange sound, deeper than a human laugh, but warm and genuine. So many questions from such a small person. "My name is Ara, you may call me. I come from very far away. My ship flies using principles your science has not yet discovered. Yes, I have a family. And my favorite color is the shade of gold that your sun makes when it sets." Lily grinned. "I like purple. Purple is also beautiful." Over the following days, told them her story. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision, and Danny noticed that she seemed to be leaving things out. But what she did share was enough to make his head spin. Her people were called the. They had been traveling between stars for longer than humans had existed as a species. Their civilization spanned more than 40,000 star systems, each one containing worlds full of people, cities, and wonders that Danny could barely imagine. They had technology that could reshape planets, cure any disease, and extend life for thousands of years. Herself was over 300 years old. She looked no older than 30 by human standards. "Why were you attacked?" Danny asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard. "Who shot down your ship?" Was quiet for a long moment. "There are those who would benefit from my death, rivals, enemies. I was traveling in secret trying to reach allies who could help me, but they found me. They chased me across half the galaxy. Your world was the closest place I could crash without dying." "But why? What makes you so important?" Looked at him with those golden eyes. Danny had the feeling she was deciding how much to tell him. "I have responsibilities, duties. There are people who want to take those from me. If they kill me, they gain power." It was not the whole truth. Danny could tell. But he had learned long ago that some people needed time before they could share their secrets. He did not push. Instead, he focused on what he could do. He could fix things. Every day, Danny went to the crashed ship. He crawled through its damaged corridors, studying its broken systems, trying to understand technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything on Earth. Most of it made no sense to him. The principles were too advanced, the concepts too alien. But some things were universal. Broken wires needed to be reconnected. Damaged panels needed to be replaced. Leaking pipes needed to be sealed. Danny did not understand how the ship worked, but he understood what broken looked like. He understood how to trace a problem back to its source. Watched him work with growing amazement. "This should not be possible," she said one afternoon. Danny had just finished repairing a power conduit using copper wire stripped from an old washing machine. "You have no training. Your species has not even achieved basic space travel. How are you doing this?" Danny shrugged. "Everything breaks the same way, more or less. You figure out what the thing is supposed to do, then you figure out what is stopping it from doing that, then you fix whatever is stopping it. Been doing it my whole life. But the technology is completely different. The principles are completely different." "Maybe, but a broken thing is still a broken thing. Does not matter if it is a car engine or a spaceship. Something is not working the way it should. My job is to make it work again." Shook her head slowly. "Your people are strange, Danny Miller." "I have been told that before." Lily joined them at the ship whenever she could. She was fearless in a way that amazed. This tiny human child walked through an alien spacecraft like it was a playground, asking questions about everything she saw, touching control panels and examining strange artifacts with endless curiosity. "Are you not afraid?" asked her once. Lily looked confused. "Afraid of what?" "Of me, of my ship, of everything that is different from your world." "Why would I be afraid? You are nice. Dad says people are only scary when they choose to be mean. You have not been mean to us." Felt something shift inside her chest. She had ruled over servants and soldiers. She had commanded fleets and negotiated treaties. But she had never met anyone who looked at her the way this child did, not as a princess, not as a symbol of power, just as a person, just as a friend. "Your father is very wise," said softly. "He is okay," Lily said with a grin. "He burns pancakes sometimes." That night after Lily went to bed, found Danny on the porch again. He was staring up at the stars, a cup of coffee in his hands. "You should tell me the truth," Danny said without looking at her. "About who you really are, about why those people want you dead." Sat down beside him. Even sitting, she towered over him. "If I tell you, it might put you in more danger." "We are already in danger. Whoever attacked you, they might come looking. I would rather know what we are facing." Was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed, and her shoulders sagged with a weight that had nothing to do with gravity. "I am not just a traveler, Danny. I am not just someone with responsibilities. I am the heir to the Dominion. My mother is the Empress. When she dies, I will rule over 40,000 star systems. I am worth more than your entire planet. And there are people who would burn whole worlds to take what is mine." Danny took a sip of his coffee. "Okay," he said. "Okay, that is all you have to say." "What else should I say? You are still the same person who has been living in my house for 2 weeks. You are still the person Lily reads bedtime stories to. Does not matter to me if you are a princess or a plumber. You needed help. I helped. That is all there is to it." Stared at him. In 300 years, no one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever treated her like she was just a person. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. So she did both. 3 weeks passed. Danny worked on the ship every day, sometimes for 12 hours straight. His hands were covered in burns and cuts from handling alien technology that did not care about human skin. His clothes were stained with fluids he could not name. But slowly, impossibly, the ship was coming back to life. Help when she could, guiding him through repairs that should have taken teams of trained engineers years to complete. She explained what each system did, how the pieces connected, what the ship needed to fly again. But the actual work was Danny's, his hands, his tools, his stubborn refusal to accept that something could not be fixed. 17 systems repaired, said one evening, reviewing the ship's diagnostic display. Out of 23 critical systems. Danny, do you understand what you have done? Still got 6 more to go, Danny said, wiping grease from his face. That navigation thing is giving me trouble. Cannot figure out why it will not calibrate. You have repaired a starship using tools from a salvage yard. You have done in 3 weeks what our engineers could not do in 3 months. This should not be possible. Danny shrugged. Possible or not, it is happening. Now help me figure out this calibration problem. Shook her head in amazement. She had seen many things in her 3 centuries of life. She had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of civilizations, but she had never seen anything quite like Danny Miller. Her people were ancient and powerful. They had built an empire that stretched across the galaxy, but somewhere along the way they had lost something. They had become too proud, too certain of their own superiority. When something seemed impossible, they accepted that it was impossible. They did not even try. Humans were different. Humans looked at the impossible and said, "Let me get my tools." It was a strange kind of magic, and was beginning to think it might be the most powerful magic in the universe. Lily continued to visit the ship every day after school. She had claimed a small corner of the control room as her own, filling it with drawings and books and the small treasures children collect. Found herself looking forward to these visits more than anything else. The little girl asked endless questions. How did the ship move faster than light? What were other planets like? Did have brothers or sisters? What was her favorite food? Could she teach Lily to speak her language? Answered every question patiently. She taught Lily simple words in. She showed her star maps and explained how to read them. She told her stories of distant worlds, of creatures that lived in the hearts of stars, of civilizations that built cities in the clouds. In return, Lily taught about Earth, about pizza and ice cream and Saturday morning cartoons, about friendship bracelets and school projects and the proper way to skip rocks across a pond, about what it meant to be a child in a world that was small and simple and good. When your ship is fixed, Lily asked one afternoon, will you leave? Felt her heart tighten. I will have to, my people need me, my mother needs me. Will you come back? I do not know, little one. The universe is very big. It is a long way from here to my home. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bracelet made of colored string. I made this for you. It is a friendship bracelet. As long as you wear it, we are friends, and friends always come back. Took the bracelet carefully. It was tiny in her large hands, fragile and simple and utterly precious. She slipped it onto her wrist, where it hung loose but somehow felt perfect. I will come back, she promised. No matter how far I have to travel, I will come back. On the 25th day, everything changed. Danny was working on the navigation system when suddenly went rigid. Her golden eyes widened, and she turned to look at the sky through the ship's damaged hull. They found me, she whispered. What, who found you? My enemy's house, they are here. Danny ran outside and looked up. 3 shapes were descending through the clouds. Ships like but sleeker, more angular, designed for war rather than travel. They moved with predatory grace, circling the salvage yard like sharks circling prey. A voice boomed from the lead ship, speaking in the same language used. Danny could not understand the words, but he could hear the threat in them, the arrogance, the certainty of power. Translated, her voice flat. Commander Al, he is demanding my surrender. He says if I come quietly, he will spare the local population. If I resist, he will destroy everything within 50 miles. Can we run? Can your ship fly? Barely, maybe one short jump, but the weapon systems are completely destroyed. We cannot fight. Danny's mind raced. 3 warships against 1 damaged vessel and a salvage yard full of junk. The odds were impossible. Anyone with sense would surrender. Danny Miller had never had much sense. How long do we have? He gave me 1 hour. Okay, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Looked at him. This small human, covered in grease, standing in the shadow of warships that could destroy cities. He should have been terrified. He should have been begging her to surrender so his daughter could live. Instead, he was already planning. I trust you, she said. Good, now tell me everything about their sensors. What do they detect? How do they track targets? For the next 30 minutes, Danny worked faster than he had ever worked in his life. He ran through the salvage yard, grabbing pieces of metal, old electronics, anything he could find. He rigged car batteries to create heat signatures. He modified old radios to broadcast on frequencies described. He built decoys from scrap metal and positioned them around the property. Watched with growing amazement. What are you doing? Making them see what I want them to see. Their sensors are looking for technology, right? Energy signatures, heat patterns. Yes. Then we give them technology. We give them energy signatures. We give them so many targets they do not know which one is real. But these are just old machines, primitive technology. They will see through the deception immediately. Danny grinned. It was not a nice grin. That is where you are wrong. Their sensors are designed to detect advanced technology. They are designed to filter out noise and focus on threats. They have never seen anything like this. They do not know how to recognize junk. He finished wiring the last decoy and stepped back. The salvage yard now bristled with false signals, each one mimicking a different type of weapon or shield or power source. To the sensors, it would look like a hidden military installation. Now, Danny said, we need to fix that communication array. You said it could reach across star systems, right? Yes, but it is badly damaged. Show me. They ran back to the ship. The communication array was a mess of melted circuits and shattered components. Any sane person would have declared it beyond repair. Danny started working. If we can broadcast a signal, he said as his hands flew across the damaged systems, can your people hear it? If it reaches loyalist forces, yes, but they will detect the transmission. They will destroy us before the signal gets through. Then we make sure they are too busy to notice. The hour was almost up. Danny made the last connection and stepped back. The array hummed to life, weak but functional. It will work, he said. Once, maybe for 30 seconds before it burns out. You will have to say everything fast. Nodded, she placed her hand on his shoulder. Danny Miller, whatever happens next, I want you to know that I have never met anyone like you. Save the speeches for later. We have got work to do. Dad, Lily's voice came from outside. She had stayed in the house like he told her, but she was watching through the window. Something is happening. The enemy ships were descending. The hour was up. It was time. The first shot hit a pile of old cars that Danny had rigged with heat generators. The explosion was massive, far bigger than it should have been, because Danny had hidden fuel tanks in the pile. Fire bloomed into the sky, and for a moment the attacking ships hesitated. Now, Danny shouted, start the transmission. Activated the communication array. Her voice rang out across the void, speaking in rapid, sending coordinates and distress codes and everything else she could think of. Somewhere out there, across the impossible distances of space, loyalist forces were listening. If they received the signal in time. The ships recovered quickly. They fired again, this time at multiple targets. More explosions rocked the salvage yard, but they were hitting decoys, not real threats. Danny's trick was working. 30 seconds, said, watching the array strain to maintain the signal. 20 seconds, 10. The array sparked and died. The signal had been sent. Now all they could do was wait and hope. The lead enemy ship descended lower. A door opened in its hull and soldiers began dropping out. They were tall-like, but their skin was darker, almost black, and their eyes burned with red light instead of gold. They wore armor that seemed to drink in the light around it. Warriors, said grimly. Each one is worth 100 ordinary soldiers. How many are there? I count 12, more than enough to kill us both. Danny picked up a metal pipe. It was not much of a weapon, but it was something. Then I guess we better make it hard for them. Danny, no, you cannot fight them. They will kill you. Probably, but I am not going to stand here and watch them take you. I am not going to let my daughter see me give up. Looked at him. This human, this impossible human, was willing to die for her, not because she was a princess, not because she was powerful, but because she was his friend. In 300 years, no one had ever been willing to die for her just because they cared. Then we fight together, she said. The soldiers advanced through the burning salvage yard. They moved with military precision, checking each pile of wreckage, scanning for threats. Danny's decoys were confusing their sensors, but they were not stupid. They knew their target was here somewhere. Danny waited in the shadow of her damaged ship. The plan was simple. When the soldiers got close enough, would distract them while Danny activated the ship's engines. Even damaged, the ship could still fly. If they could get airborne, they might be able to escape long enough for help to arrive. It was not a good plan, but it was the only plan they had. The first soldier came around the corner and saw them. He raised his weapon and fired. Danny dove to the side. The shot missed him by inches, burning a hole through the metal behind him. He rolled to his feet and swung his pipe at the soldier's knee. The impact jarred his arms, but the soldier stumbled. Was there instantly. She grabbed the soldier and threw him into his companions. Her strength was enormous, far greater than Danny had realized. 3 soldiers went down in a tangle of limbs. But more were coming, always more. "Get to the ship," shouted. "Start the engines." Danny ran. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of fighting against a dozen elite warriors. It should have been a slaughter, but was not just a princess. She was the heir to an empire that had conquered worlds. Her ancestors had been warriors when humans were still living in caves. She was holding them off, but she could not do it forever. Danny reached the control room and slammed his hands onto the console. The ship groaned and shuddered as damaged systems tried to come online. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Half the displays were dead, but the engines were spinning up, slowly, painfully. "Come on," Danny muttered. "Come on, you beautiful broken machine, work for me." The ship lurched. For a horrible moment, Danny thought it was going to die. Then the engines caught and power flooded through the ancient systems. The ship began to rise. Outside had fought her way back toward the ship. 5 soldiers were down, but 7 more were pressing her hard. She was wounded, bleeding from a cut on her arm, but she was still fighting. Danny opened the cargo door. "Now." She turned and ran. A soldier fired at her back. The shot grazed her shoulder, spinning her around, but she kept moving. She leaped through the cargo door and collapsed onto the floor. Danny hit the controls to close the door, but not fast enough. One soldier made it through before the door sealed. He landed in the cargo bay, weapon raised, aimed directly at its head. Danny did not think, he just moved. He threw himself between the soldier and the weapon fired. The world turned white. Pain, more pain than Danny had ever felt. His side was on fire. He looked down and saw a smoking hole where his ribs used to be. Blood was spreading across his shirt, so much blood. He fell. Screamed. The sound was not human. It was the roar of a predator, of something ancient and terrible. She grabbed the soldier who had shot Danny and lifted him off the ground with one hand. "You hurt him," she said, her voice cold as space. "You hurt the one person in this universe who asked nothing of me, who helped me because it was the right thing to do." The soldier tried to speak, but's hand was around his throat. She squeezed, and his armor crumpled like paper. More soldiers were trying to force the cargo door open from outside, threw the body of their comrade at them and slammed the door controls. Then she ran to Danny. "No," she said, kneeling beside him. "No, no, no, you cannot die. I will not let you die." Danny's vision was fading. Everything seemed very far away, but he could still see his face above him, her golden eyes filled with tears. "Lily," he whispered, "take care of Lily. You will take care of her yourself. Stay with me, Danny. Help is coming." "Help?" "I can feel them, the Loyalist fleet. They received our signal. They are almost here." Danny smiled. It hurt to smile, but he did it anyway. Told you it would work." "Yes, you told me. You stubborn, impossible human. You told me and I should have believed you." The ship shook as weapons fire struck its hull, but the shields were holding. Somehow, despite everything, the shields were holding. Danny's repairs had worked. Outside, through the cargo bay window, Danny saw something impossible. Stars were appearing where there had been empty sky, except they were not stars. They were ships. Hundreds of ships, dropping out of faster-than-light travel, filling the sky with light and power. The Loyalist fleet had arrived. The ships tried to run, but they were too slow, too outnumbered. Within minutes, they were surrounded and captured. The soldiers on the ground surrendered when they realized their commanders had abandoned them. Medical teams boarded ship seconds later. They found the princess kneeling in a pool of human blood, holding a small man who should have been dead. Danny Miller's heart stopped twice during the emergency surgery. Twice, they brought him back. Because humans, the doctors would later note, are very hard to kill. They cling to life with a stubbornness that defies all reason. Just like everything else they do. Danny woke up in a bed made of light. That was the only way to describe it. The surface beneath him glowed with a soft warmth, supporting his body without any pressure, molding itself to his shape like it was alive. The room around him was unlike anything he had ever seen. Curved walls of flowing metal, windows that showed stars instead of sky, the gentle hum of machinery that was thousands of years beyond anything Earth could build. He was on a spaceship. A real spaceship, not the damaged vessel he had spent weeks repairing, but something whole and powerful and impossibly advanced. "Dad." Lily was beside him, climbing onto the bed, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Danny hugged her back, ignoring the twinge of pain in his side where the wound had been. "I am okay, sweetheart," he said. "I am okay." "You almost died. The doctors said your heart stopped, twice. But it started again. That is what matters." Appeared in the doorway. She looked different. Her torn clothing had been replaced with robes of shimmering gold and purple. A circlet of metal sat on her brow, glowing with the same golden light as her eyes. She looked like what she was, a princess, an heir, someone who commanded the loyalty of trillions. But when she smiled at Danny, she was still just. "You are awake," she said. "The doctors were not sure when you would recover. Human biology is unusual." "So I have been told." Danny sat up slowly. His side ached, but it was a dull ache, nothing like the screaming agony he remembered. "How long was I out?" 3 days. We have traveled far in that time. They have been captured and will face justice. Your world is safe. And my mother," paused, "my mother has demanded to meet you." Danny blinked. "Your mother, the Empress?" "Yes. She rules over 40,000 star systems. She commands armies that number in the trillions. She has lived for over 8,000 years, and she wants to meet the human who saved her daughter's life." "Great, I will make sure to comb my hair." Laughed. It was a warm sound, full of joy and relief. "I have missed you, Danny Miller. These past 3 days, I was so afraid that I would never hear your voice again. Takes more than a hole in my chest to keep me down. Ask anyone back home. I am too stubborn to die." "Yes, I am beginning to understand that about your species." The next few days were a blur of wonders. Danny and Lily traveled aboard a ship the size of a city, passing through regions of space that made Danny's head hurt just to look at. They saw nebulae that glowed with colors he could not name. They watched stars being born in clouds of gas and dust. They passed ancient megastructures built by civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth existed. Lily treated everything like an adventure. She asked questions constantly, explored every corner of the ship she was allowed to enter, and made friends with crew members who were 3 times her size. They, for their part, were fascinated by her. Human children were a novelty. Human children who showed no fear were practically miraculous. "She is like her father," one of the senior officers told. "Small, fragile, and utterly unafraid of anything." "Yes," agreed. "It seems to be a species trait." They arrived on the 7th day. Danny stood at a viewing window and stared at a planet that made Earth look like a marble. Vast cities covered its surface, connected by bridges of light. Ships moved in constant streams, coming and going from hundreds of spaceports. The whole world pulsed with energy and life. "This is where you grew up?" he asked. "This is where I was raised. Where I grew up, that is a different question. I think perhaps I am still growing up. I think perhaps meeting you and Lily was part of that process." The Imperial Palace was a structure that description. It was a mountain of crystal and metal, reaching toward the sky like a hand grasping for the stars. Inside, corridors stretched for miles, filled with art and history and the accumulated wealth of 8,000 years of empire. The throne room was at the heart of it all. Danny walked toward the throne with Lily holding his hand, walked beside them, calm and composed, but Danny could feel her tension. This was her mother. This was the most powerful being in the galaxy. Even after 300 years, meeting your mother was apparently still nerve-wracking. The Empress sat on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single diamond. She was old in a way that went beyond physical age. Her skin was pale gold, her eyes ancient and deep, and when she looked at Danny, he felt like she could see through him to his very soul. Where ambassadors and nobles would have performed elaborate rituals of respect, Danny simply walked up to the throne and stuck out his hand. "Nice to meet you," he said. "You raised one hell of a daughter." The entire court went silent. Hundreds of nobles and officials stood frozen, waiting to see how the Empress would react to this unimaginable breach of protocol. The Empress looked at Danny's hand, then she looked at his face. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She laughed. It was a warm laugh, genuine and surprised. She reached out and shook Danny's hand with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "You are exactly as my daughter described," the Empress said. "Small, odd, and completely without pretense. I try my best." She also told me what you did, how you found her, helped her, repaired her ship with nothing but primitive tools and determination, how you fought against impossible odds to protect her, how you nearly died rather than let her be taken. Just did what needed doing. Anyone would have done the same. "No," the Empress said softly, "they would not. In 8,000 years I have seen every kind of person, the greedy, the kind, the cruel, the brave. I have never seen anyone quite like you, Danny Miller. Your species is young and small. Your world is a tiny speck on the edge of known space, but you have something my people lost long ago." "What is that?" "Hope, the ability to look at something impossible and believe you can change it. My people have become too old, too certain of what can and cannot be done. We have forgotten how to try." The treaty that followed changed everything. Humanity was young and weak, but they had a patron now. Technology began flowing to Earth. Not weapons, but tools for healing, for growing food, for cleaning the polluted oceans and the poisoned air. In exchange, the Dominion asked for nothing except friendship and the chance to learn from these strange little beings who refused to accept the impossible. Danny was offered titles, lands, positions of power. He turned them all down. "I just want to go home," he told. "I want to take Lily back to Cedar Falls, fix up the salvage yard, and maybe get a good night's sleep for once." You could have anything, wealth beyond measure, power beyond imagination. Why would you want to go back to that small life? Danny smiled. "Because it is my life. Because that is where Lily grew up, where her mother is buried, where we belong. The universe is big and full of wonders, but home is home." Understood. More than anyone else she understood. She escorted them back to Earth personally. The salvage yard was still there, from the battle but standing. Neighbors had gathered to stare at the sky, at the impossible ship descending through the clouds. Danny stepped out onto his own soil and breathed in the familiar Iowa air. It smelled like dirt and grass and home. "Will you come back?" Lily asked, just as she had asked before. "You promised." Knelt down and showed Lily the friendship bracelet still wrapped around her wrist. "I promised, and I keep my promises." She came back often, this 9-foot princess worth more than worlds. She came to sit on the porch and watch the sunset. She came to help Danny repair engines and sort through salvage. She came to read bedtime stories to Lily and listen to her talk about school and friends and dreams. The galaxy watched humanity with new eyes. These small creatures who had barely left their own planet had somehow captured the heart of the most powerful princess in known space. They had faced impossible odds and won through nothing but stubbornness and kindness, and the refusal to give up. The universe had underestimated them. As Danny sat on his porch one evening, watching teach Lily how to identify stars, he thought about everything that had happened. A crashed ship, an injured stranger, a choice to help. That was all it had taken. One small act of kindness and everything had changed. He did not know what the future would bring. He did not know what challenges humanity would face as they took their first steps into the larger universe. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they would face it the same way they had faced everything else. With hope, with determination, with the absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Because that was what humans did. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant.